We've talked a lot about the measles comeback. It's almost a bigger comeback than when the Red Sox went down 3-0 to the Yankees in 2004. And after pulling out game four, won games 5, 6, and 7 to ultimately go back to the World Series and win it, ending the curse. Maybe it's not exactly like that, but measles is making a big comeback. Maybe not like the Red Sox in 2004. And the reason measles is making a comeback is because Donald Trump and RFK Jr. have turned basic vaccines into a huge culture war issue. Congratulations to the anti-vax movement. We now have another comeback. Tetanus is the next one that doctors are warning about. Tetanus, lockjaw, this horrible bacterial infection. It was reduced to a tiny number of cases because of the vaccine. In 1948, the US had 601 cases of tetanus. Recently, the entire country has had between 15 and 28 cases of tetanus. But in 2024, there were 32. And in 2025, there were 37. That's the most in a decade. Now, 37 cases is not an epidemic. Tetanus is not spreading through the air. It's not spreading from person to person. But the rate of change is alarming because more than 75% of the places where there are these infections, we have seen the rate of childhood tetanus vaccination decline over the last 7 years. Tetanus is not good. The bacteria live in soil and manure. This is why if you get a puncture wound or a minor cut, sometimes you're advised to go and get a tetanus shot. And the infection causes your jaw to lock, the back to arch, muscles to contract in these spasms. Light can trigger the spasms. Noises can trigger the spasms. You can lose your ability to swallow or even breathe. A 9-year-old who had not been vaccinated against tetanus in Florida spent 37 days sedated and intubated with tetanus in the hospital. A 16-year-old boy, not vaccinated, in Kansas, stepped on something, got a puncture wound. The family treated it with burdock leaf and bread mold. Should that be criminal? The kid eventually spent 40 days in intensive care, got pneumonia, got bed sores, needed physical therapy, needed speech therapy. Guys, we have a vaccine. So we've covered the measles catastrophe already. We covered the unvaccinated children who died in Texas. We covered parents who lost a 6-year-old daughter to measles and still said it was the right decision not to get the vaccine. We've covered RFK kind of equivocating as the outbreak was exploding. We covered Trump babbling about 80 different vaccines with a gallon of liquid being injected and all of this stuff. And by July of 2026, the U.S. had 2,300 measles cases, the most in 35 years. And 90 or more percent of the people who got it were not vaccinated. The anti-vaccine response is always just move the goalposts. Well, if nobody died, it's harmless. And when somebody does die, they go, well, they were obese or they had some other condition, they had diabetes or something else. When several people die, they go, well, these are personal choices. The reason these diseases have become rare is because of the vaccines. Before the measles vaccines, 3 to 4 million Americans were getting measles every year, hundreds dying. After vaccination, cases were down 99%. Same thing with tetanus. Having a tetanus vaccine transformed it from this thing that will kill you into something most people never even think about and some don't even know about. And so now we find ourselves in this ridiculous administration led by Trump and RFK, one of the most influential, I would argue, anti-vaccine activists running the Department of Health and Human Services. And we're just like walking backwards. Modern medicine is that way. We've been walking towards it. We've turned around and we're walking the other way. Now, the promise of we're going to make America healthy again is not lost on me in its irony, because we've got measles surging, vaccination rates falling, and doctors saying, hey, we've got to be more prepared to deal with lockjaw in 2026, entering 2027. We've got to hold people accountable for this. When we go and we vote, we really have to think, what were the promises and what have been the outcomes? Well, the promises on the economy, we're going to look at 11 of them, by the way. The promises on the economy have all failed. Do they deserve to be rewarded for that with a vote, or do they need to be voted out? What about on health? Well, they promise make America healthy again. We're going to fix autism, and we're going to fix obesity, and we're going to fix diabetes, all this different stuff. Measles is back. Tetanus is back. And it is an absolute and total disaster. Let's just hold them accountable to their promises. That's all I'm asking. Sometimes the most important part of a political story is not what gets reported, but what gets placed in the center of the frame. And that is why our sponsor, Ground News, is so valuable. Take a look at Trump's Medicaid work requirement rule. The underlying story is that a lot of adults on Medicaid will have to do 80 hours a month of work, school, or volunteering to keep their coverage. When our sponsor, Ground News, lines up the sources, the framing really changes. On the left, the focus is human consequences. What happens if you're sick and you lose coverage? On the right, it's how much will it cost to implement these requirements? What about states saying that's going to be really expensive? And what's revealing is only around 10% of the coverage is coming from right-leaning sources. They're mostly ignoring the story. Ground News will flag gaps like this through its blind spot feed, so you can see when a major story is getting very little attention from one side of the media landscape. Go to ground.news/Pakman for 40% off the same Vantage plan I use. The link is in the description.